With Oz Griebel. Next week we have Bob Stefanowski. The following Sunday we have Ned Lamont. Let's talk about some of the things. Obviously you're going to have to cut some things. As you look at the state budget, where do you see waste specifically?
You know, I don't know whether I'd see waste. You look at
something that needs to be cut.
Well, I think the idea of getting at the unfunded pension liability, so that the amount we have to contribute each year to that is a big deal. I'll go back and say we've got to start laying the groundwork, Dennis, for delivering municipal services on more of a regional basis. That's going to take time to get started. Those are things that have to fundamentally change. We've got to look at. Go back to the answer to the prior question you asked about the privatization of certain services that we fund as taxpayers, but could be delivered differently by some of our not-for-profits, particularly in the area where we're dealing with mental health issues, people with severe physical issues. There are a number of not-for-profits in this state that do the job extremely well. We've got to make sure that they're funded and allow their ingenuity and their flexibility to come forward. I'll just go back and say something I said a second ago. The concept is doing the least amount of damage, Dennis, in this first budget cycle. That's why the rainy day fund, that's why looking at postponing certain contributions to the retirement funds have to be part of the discussion. Every line item is going to have to be looked at because the one thing we don't want to do is do irreparable damage to the economy. We've got a high quality of life here, and I think as we start, in order to get some of the structural changes that will take 2 and 3 budget cycles in place, we've got to make sure that we don't do any more harm than has been in the past several cycles.
Let's talk about some of the potential revenue sources. One of them is tolls, and you've said that you feel that tolls might be inevitable. But in what form, though? Because not everyone wants them throughout the whole state. Some say they wouldn't be bad at the borders.
Right. Well, first of all, you got constitutional issues. This notion of border tolls and trucks only to me is a lot of legal hoo-ha. The truckers, I think, are already challenging the Rhode Island approach to trucks only. I think that was all done just to lay the groundwork for ultimately everybody paying. And I believe that tolls, I mean, you go through Massachusetts, pick whatever state you go through, tolls, electronic tolls are part of our transportation system. What I've said is that in order to demonstrate to all of us in Connecticut that the world won't come to an end when we put them in place, is we'd take the HOV lanes on 91 and 84 in Hartford, put the reader over those lanes, and let's try it. Let's see what happens. Take advantage of the readers, how you use transponders, how you use congestion pricing. So if you're asking me where I think the tolls ought to go ultimately, they would be on the major interstates, I-84, 91, and 95. I'd have to look before you ever went any further than that. It's looking at where you've got the major traffic issues and where people from out of state are using those interstates. That's got to be an area of focus.
Do you see them in the interior parts of the state, perhaps if someone
not initially, no, not. I mean, I think that, again, you're looking, and you're going to have to go through EPA state. That's why I'm talking about putting this pilot on I-84, on the HOV lanes in 94 and 91. 84 and 91, because it's going to take several years to get federal approval to get them on board. But do the revenues out of electronic tolls have to be part of the long-term financing of transportation investment? They absolutely have to be part of the discussion.
While we're on the subject of driving, one of the big complaints I get from viewers all the time is the car tax. People move from other states that don't have a car tax. They come here and all of a sudden they're billed on a car, and it's expensive depending on where you live. You can live in Hartford and pay $600 across the street. You pay $1,200 in West Hartford.
I'm going to say the same thing I said about the lack of doing as little damage in this first biennium as possible. Is that a goal to get rid of the car tax? Yes. Is it something you can do in the first 2 years? I'm not sure. I mean, because you're going to have, as you just said, that's a revenue source for municipalities. So if we're going to wind up, as we have for the last 4 cycles, you're not going to get increases in municipal aid in that first biennium. So where is the revenue for the towns the municipalities going to come from if you strip that away? I mean, this notion that you're going to get rid of something has to be coupled with how are you going to replace it. Are you going to replace it with reduction in services, or are you going to replace it with an additional tax? That's the lack of candid discussion that you're seeing from the 2 major party candidates.
Do you support regulating, legalizing marijuana and having it regulated?
It's the reality. I mean, it's around us. We have to deal with this issue. So the core answer is yes, I think we have to move forward to legalizing it. But a couple of key points that I'd want to make sure. We're not here to promote recreational marijuana. So the idea of what the safety issues are, do you buy it at the same age as you do alcohol? There are a number of regulations that I think we need to think through before we just jump in that pool. The more important thing I would say to you is the revenue that would be generated from taxing that marijuana, to me, would not go into the general fund. We would dedicate that fund substance abuse programs to make sure that they're in place, that they're fully funded, that we're taking care of agencies in the mental health area. There has to be a little bit more strategic thinking behind this than just saying we're going to legalize it. Are we going to legalize it? We're going to have to, because it's going to be around us. We'll be surrounded by states that have legalized it.
At the debate, all three of you pretty much said that the state should have a comprehensive plan for expanding casino gambling and just not stick one in East Windsor.
Right.
What's your plan for that?
Well, first of all, you got the tribes to deal with, Dennis. I mean, I don't have a plan until we figure we understand.
What would you say to them, though? To the tribes?
I would want to get to the point where I think ought to be the bidding for, or they ought to be open. But I also know that they've got a legal hammer that you have to work your way through. So how do we get to a point where those two tribes are willing to work with this administration to get to a point where their business model is appropriately protected, and at the same time the state is not hamstrung or handicapped by a limitation? I haven't looked at all the legal things, Dennis, but it would be the idea of sitting down with them to understand what the best thing for the state is.
Has this monopoly been good for the state?
Has it been good for the state?
Well, because other casino operators would like to come here,
right,
and they can't.
Well, I'm more of a, whether it's good or bad, it's what the reality we have to deal with, and how does that change? And you've got the federal government involved with the Indian Bureau. I'm not sure I've got a nice, easy answer for you. I'm not a big fan of monopolies, if that's what you're asking me. The idea of having, so if Bridgeport, when we had the discussions around, should the opportunity for third-party operators come in with casinos? Yes. I'm not sure it's going to do all the great things that some people think it's going to do in terms of the economy, but I think that's something that ought to be open to the marketplace to decide who runs a casino in Bridgeport or East Windsor or wherever. On the Bridgeport one, the one I'd want to emphasize to you, Dennis, is we'd have to make sure we understood the traffic implications. I mean, if we're going to, if you bring a casino operator in, what are their responsibilities around things like moving people from New York or Long Island by ferry service up, so we don't continue to exacerbate a very serious congestion problem along 95.
We have many millennials voting this year.
Yep.
In fact, a record number, and we have many of them watching right now. And they want a thriving city because they don't want to be taking jobs in Chicago and Washington. They'd like to be able to stay in their state. So what is your vision for improving the cities of Connecticut to the point where they attract business, but they also attract millennials? Well,
first of all, there are millennials who are going to go to Chicago no matter what we do here. People are going to go to where they think their next best opportunity is. So the most important thing I can say to a millennial, to anybody who's 30, 40, or 50, is our goal is that every decision we make in their administration will be based on the most important criteria will be, does that decision enhance Connecticut's ability to net on a net basis 200,000 more private sector jobs in the state over the next 10 years. We've had no net job growth in the state in 30 years, Dennis. If we don't have employment opportunities, I don't care whatever other kind of entertainment venues you have, people need to work. They want to work. They want exciting opportunities. The other thing I would say to you on this is that when I say to a young person, are you going to turn Hartford or Bridgeport into Boston and New York? No, we're not. But think about the proximity. One of two of our biggest assets, economic assets in the state, is our proximity to Boston and New York, and our relatively low cost of living and working in the state of Connecticut and eliminating congestion issues of the type you have in Boston and New York. This state's got a lot to sell, and that's a primary goal of the governor to make sure that we are promoting our assets.
We're going to talk seniors and viewer questions when we come back, and we encourage you to let us know what you're thinking. Find me on social media, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Let me know what you're thinking of this interview right now.